Am I the asshole for telling my husband that he will lose the privilege to name our daughter if he gives his parents $45,000? My husband, Gary, M41, and I, F38, are expecting our first child in a little more than 3 months. As you can imagine, things have been quite hectic as we prepare. Overall, Gary is an excellent spouse. However, he has an issue regarding his relationship with his parents. Gary's family lived in extreme poverty for most of his life. It was so bad that his parents would regularly skip meals so that he and his brothers had enough to eat, and they came close to homelessness several times. Fortunately, Gary and his brothers were all able to secure good, stable jobs and have worked hard to pull their parents out of poverty. The biggest issue I have with Gary is that he spends excessively on his parents. Around the time we met, he had just taken out a mortgage on a nice house for them. This strained our relationship at the time because I didn't want him to make any major financial commitments to other people before we were married. This was perhaps the biggest example until now. In the past few weeks, I've noticed Gary talking a lot with his brothers about buying something else for their parents. I was curious, so I asked him, and he mentioned something about how he and his brothers wanted to buy a car for their parents since their old one was starting to have issues. I asked him not to spend too much because we're expecting a baby and don't know what expenses will arise in the coming months. He reassured me that he wouldn't. For the past 2 weeks or so, Gary has been working later than usual. I even overheard him telling a friend in our neighborhood that he needed to work longer hours because he was about to make a major purchase. I'll admit this next part may seem wrong, but I was frustrated with his late hours, so I logged onto his home laptop. I saw that on Tuesday he made a $45,000 wire transfer. Of course, I was fuming seeing he spent that much, and my curiosity got the better of, so I checked out his WhatsApp, also on his computer, and read some of the messages he was sending his brothers. Turns out they are preparing to drop around $105,000 on a car called a G90 for their parents. Gary sent the $45,000 to his brother who lives in the same city as their parents. I saw a few pictures of the specific car, and read some of the messages he was sending the dealership rep about fully on board, and all this made me feel sick to my stomach. When Gary came home, I did confront him about this. I said that he was being irresponsible for spending that kind of money without consulting me, and that I wanted him and his brothers to cancel the whole thing for the time being. Gary became very defensive and started saying that we had more than enough money in case of an emergency, and that he'd work overtime the next few weeks so that he could make it back. We argued. I called him a liar. He said I broke his trust by going through his computer. I got so angry, angrier than I've ever been, and I told him that since he spent this kind of money without telling me, he lost the privilege to name our daughter. He got frustrated by this and just said I was being too much. We ended up not eating together, and we even slept separately last night. We have also not spoken since, as he ended up leaving extra early for work today. I personally think he's being too stubborn, but my best friend thinks I'm too harsh and that I should apologize. AITA context. For those wondering, last year according to his taxes he made about $763K. Give or take this year, he should be making around the same amount. My issues are that he went behind my back, and 45 is still a massive amount of money.
Am I the asshole for accidentally raising my voice at my wife and throwing away her dishes and clothes because she won't wash them, just buy new ones? I, 28M, have been married to my wife F30 for 2 years now, together for 5. We were going to start trying for a baby, but that got put on hold and might not happen anymore. My wife and I both work, and we make about the same amount and work about the same amount of hours. My wife and I originally had a chore system set up where we just rock, paper, scissors at the calendar for our days off. We got a pretty fair cut, I want to say, but she did get more dishes days. I got more, if not all, the laundry. My wife hates washing dishes. She hates it with such a passion that she sometimes just shuts down and cries when she sees them in the sink. Before, when I caught her crying, I immediately went to help her, switch chores for the day, calm her down, and then it was fine. But because I was doing this, I noticed that she was crying on purpose so I washed the dishes. I knew she was faking it because the second I took over, her tears stopped, and she'd go do something fun that she liked without a care in a world, laughing and smiling. No wind down like before. Because of this, we changed our dishes to whoever makes the dish washes it, like children with the exception of cooking. Whoever cooks doesn't have to wash the pots and pans because they put all the work in for dinner. This was also her suggestion, which I was more than okay with. This was working out for a little while until I noticed that my wife made a lot more dishes than me and just didn't want to wash them. I asked her when she planned on washing dishes after I made dinner at her request, and she blew up on me, telling me to quite literally fuck off. I did as she said but left the dishes. The next day she asked me why the dishes weren't done, and I told her because she didn't do them. This started a fight and I washed them, but I was unhappy. I do most if not all of the laundry because she just won't anymore, and I refuse to wear dirty clothes. The only thing she has to do with the laundry is put it in the basket. That's it. We have a basket for darks, colors, and whites. She insists on her own basket for underwear and whatnot, so that's its own thing, and I hand wash it. She's been not putting her clothes in the basket. At first I picked up all of her clothes and washed them because it was no big deal, but when I watched her take her clothes off and just leave them on the floor because I always pick it up, I chose to leave her clothes there. She asked me why her clothes weren't done. I said because she didn't put them away, and she blew up on me. Same story. Recently this all came to a head with all the fighting. My wife has been getting lazier and lazier to push back because of our fights, and at first I was doing all of her chores on top of working, but I had a little moment of why am I even doing this, and just stopped. The dishes piled, her clothes were dirty, crumbs were everywhere on her days. On my days, everything was spick and span. She decided that she's going to just start buying more dishes and clothes to combat not doing her part. I cannot tell you how frustrated this made me. She was buying plastic spoons and forks, paper plates, Walmart t-shirts, and whatever other cheap alternative to the nice ones she has at home. I just decided to start tossing them. When she noticed that I was tossing her cheap alternatives, she blew up at me again, and for the first time since we've been together, I raised my voice. My voice is deep and I'm a big man, so this scared her, which I regretted. I immediately lowered my tone and told her that she just isn't doing her part and that she's wasting money buying useless things when all she has to do is just clean up after herself and put clothes in a basket. She cried, and despite how many times I apologized, she told me that she doesn't feel safe with me and that maybe we're better off divorcing. This shattered me. She's been cold with me, sleeping on the couch and playing domestic violence signs videos out loud. It's such a low blow. The videos usually talk about yelling, throwing away items, control, emotional abuse, and signs that they're going to get physical. I don't think I'm wrong for what I did, but this is really wearing me down, and I've been getting some texts here and there from our families calling me an asshole, an abuser for throwing away her things and yelling at her, and that she needs to divorce me. The yelling was an accident. No one has wanted to hear what fully happened, and it's making me feel alone and a bit crazy. My friends are either staying out of it or are on her side if they're women. I've been losing friends. I feel like the asshole now. Am I the asshole? All I wanted was for her to clean up after herself. I'd never hurt her, and I've never yelled at her before, which I do regret. I didn't mean to scare her. I was just beyond frustrated because this has been building for months. I get that it was probably immature to throw away the disposables and that I should have just cleaned up after her, but I was just frustrated. TLDR. Wife started buying disposable dishes and cheap Walmart clothes after she stopped doing chores and I didn't pick up after her. She found out, we fought. She's been cold and playing DV sign videos out loud. I feel like the asshole now, but a tiny part of me still feels like I'm not.
Update. Am I the asshole for leaving my sister's wedding early after her maid of honor humiliated me in her speech? The same day I posted, my dad called to check up on me and see if my sister and I had talked things out. When I told him no, he said it's better if we talk about it now and assured me that I have nothing to apologize for. If my sister thinks she has nothing to apologize for, then the least she can do is make her best friend apologize or fully realize that the joke was out of line. By the way, my brother and I met 4 days ago, and he told me that Bill, my sister's husband, didn't like the way the MOH called me a screw-up in front of everyone, and some of those who laughed voiced later that they did so out of nervousness. On Monday, my sister called me to talk. When I made it to her place, her best friend was on the phone and didn't put it down for a second. My sister started by saying that just a few years ago, I would have laughed hard and not taken the joke as an insult. I told her maybe some laugh because they don't know the reason she called me a screw-up. For context, when I was 16, something happened, and that's why I struggled mentally really badly between 16 to 18. When I was 17, I was diagnosed with PTSD and later with depression and anxiety. Since then, I don't like it when someone touches my head, especially my hair and the back of my head/neck. My sister knows everything. During our conversation, my sister did most of the talking. At some point, I felt like my sister had called me just to blame me again without trying to understand my perspective. When I tried to talk, she put her hand on the back of my neck and pulled me toward her with each sentence as if to say, "Do you understand?" or "Okay." I hated it and felt irritated. I'd honestly kept thinking, if I pushes her away, would I be in the wrong? Would they just call me mental and tell family I got physical? I tried to leave, but she insisted that no one was leaving until we sort this out. She told her best friend to just apologize. She refused and reminded my sister that I was the reason her husband got angry at her on their wedding day because I couldn't take a joke, and when I tried to explain why, I told her if she had focused her speech on the bride/groom, then maybe he wouldn't have had a reason to be angry. She refused to listen and brushed my words off. She said, "Yeah, whatever. Sorry." I was glad it was finally over, and as I was about to leave, I heard her say, "Can't take a joke that everyone knows is true." Both of them laughed, but my sister stopped mid-laugh and apologized. I didn't say anything and left. I think I'd had enough. I mean, I know I'd had a few rough years. I dropped out of college for a while, fine, but I've since gotten my life back on track. My parents helped me through it all and never made me feel like a burden. At first, I was on some strong meds that made me feel tired/sleepy most of the time. After a while, I started to feel a little better with therapy and my family's support. During that period, it was me, my parents, and my brother. My sister was 3 hours away for a job and used to visit sometimes and would often bring her best friend along with her. Looking back, I don't want to say she hates me, but I know she felt ashamed to have a family member struggling with mental health issues. I don't know how to explain this. I've made up my mind and decided to go NC for now. If my parents and my brother, who were there when I was going through it all, never made me feel that they're ashamed of me, then why would she? I'm still on some meds but feels much better than before. I have a stable job, my own place, and friends who loves me for who I am. I can say I'm proud of myself a little. I love my family to death and tried to maintain a relationship with my sister all these years, but I'm trying to improve myself, not constantly be reminded of what I was a few years ago.